Yo, what's good? Welcome back to another interview. We got Allan Hender on for this one. Big Al, my guy. I'm sure a lot of you have only just come to know this guy and his work, right, from Flashpoint 2 in the past few months. Obviously doing a great job there. We talk about that and some of his opinions on analysis, keeping things simple but not patronizing, making sure that he gets things across kind of quickly. You know, he's not extending the points too long. And then we also have quite an interesting conversation about the Telestration segments, the Weatherman segments, as they're jokingly kind of known, right? And how maybe they're not used to their fullest of potential, and what more he feels he could bring to segments like that. Again, keeping things succinct and in touch with the rest of the broadcast, I think, is what a lot of the problem that he feels at the moment is, that they can be quite jarring, they can be quite isolated, and that's something that obviously he wants to change. We also talk about his role as a coach and in the university scene, which is where I first came across him. At the same time that I was starting my commentating, he was coaching the most successful team in the university scene at the time. So really, really intriguing to get some of that insight, as always, into, you know, some of the beginnings and where that has led, and now what some of his goals are moving forwards with broadcasts. Either way, you know the drill by now. Leave a like, drop a sub, drop a comment. Every Wednesday, 6 p.m. UK time, there'll be a new one of these. But without further ado, let's get into the interview. So welcome in, everybody. Welcome back to another interview here. I'm going to be joined by Allan today. I'm pretty excited for this one, to be honest, because I think, you know, you and I, as we were literally just talking about a second ago, starting in similar areas. You know, you coaching for that Warwick team, that was, I would say, my first like notable casting gig with the Newell, and it was certainly an interesting one, to say the least. You know, in that little Red Bull gaming sphere that was going on. It was a lot of fun. First question I had for you, to be honest, does go towards that, I think, because it's kind of telling for me in a sense. I'm not entirely sure if beforehand you did, but certainly in that 2018 run with you guys, I think, you know, you had a good couple seasons where you performed very, very strongly. Certainly with you, I don't know about at the helm, but, you know, coaching things behind the scenes for sure. One of the only teams, if not the only team, that were doing that at the time. What is it that drew you to coaching? Because generally speaking, like, you know, while you're at uni, most players of the game would probably just play. You know what I mean? Even if you are a bit more of an in-game leader type or a supportive type element that you might expect, you know, a coach to enjoy those roles when playing. Why is it that you decided to jump straight into the coaching?
It's a good question. So there's a bit of backstory. What we're talking about here is the UK collegiate scene, where I had a lot of success coaching. So in terms of how I got into it, in general, I've been around the game for a long time, since, well, not that long, maybe since 2014, and doing kind of journalist stuff since 2015. So I had a couple of years of that under my belt. And then in at the start of 2018, a good friend of mine, who was also my flatmate, was the in-game leader for the Warwick team. And at the end of 2017, they had, in the context of those sort of tournaments, a breakout result where they really should have won. It was called Fragstock, which at that time was one of the bigger tournaments. They should have won that final. And I was getting drunk in Liverpool whilst they were playing that. So I wasn't coaching them at that point. But so they had a really good result there. And then at the start of 2018, it was just like a very sort of progressive thing where I said, okay, I'll sit in some games, I'll sit in some scrims, and I'll just say what I think, because my game knowledge was easily good enough to kind of help them at that point. So it kind of went from there. I sat in a few scrims, and then from there I ended up coaching the team. And then slowly but surely it turned into me being the captain of the team, just because my kind of knowledge of overall how a team should function, or how you use all the pieces in CS in the game in general, was being blunt, quite a lot better than the other players who just kind of come up through pugging, and they don't really understand the overall team game. So it was a very natural transition. And then by the time we started playing tournaments and playing finals, I was leading the team. I was calling for the team outside of the finals and stuff. And then across that 2018, we played 6 tournaments. We won 6, and 5 of them had offline portions. And most of the time offline I couldn't call, but outside of that, I was pretty much calling the entire time. So that's kind of how I transitioned into it. And certainly by the end of the year, I was definitely the captain of the team.
Mm. Yeah, it's really interesting to me, and I think certainly admiring from the casting perspective. In my case of watching you guys be incredibly dominant, at least in the Newell, and what I was involved in, and obviously a lot of the storyline that we pushed was because you guys were running a coach, running that extra level, and some of the other teams I seem to remember, like Lancaster at the time, maybe were like a top contender, had some really solid fraggers, but maybe like structurally and whatnot weren't that sound, and it was more so that they were just beaners, really, as they'd say in the UK scene. How do you think like being in that coaching role has perhaps helped you, like more recently obviously you've moved into like doing some analyst work? Is it that very early, very quick knowledge of the game and how the pieces work helps you moving into coaching? Then you get to put some of that into practice, and then you can perhaps like extrapolate that information when looking at top tier teams.
Yeah, it's a good topic to talk about because when I first started coaching, and even to be honest, this sort of level of team and sort of level of competition isn't very high. To beat Lancaster in these sort of finals, all we had to do was essentially do the basics, and that's all we did. We just played the simplest CS possible, and I just showed them roughly, this is how you default, this is how you play the standard CT setups, this is how we rotate, this is how we play as a team. And then we just won through fundamentals, just because the competition didn't have those sort of things down. And when you do some coaching, even at this sort of level, what you learn very quickly, and even for someone like me that I'd already watched thousands of hours of top level CS at that point, is there's quite a lot you lose in translation when you go from either broadcasting or doing content or being a journalist and actually being in the server, having to make calls, having to put these rounds in. There's a lot that's lost when you just watch from the outside. And certainly there's plenty of cases of this sort of thing happening where people go from broadcasting to coaching and they get a massive shock to the system when it's a totally different world. And when you actually have to go to the minutiae of adding these strategies and stuff, it's very, very different. So just from coaching, it was very, very good at learning quickly what actually matters, what actually determines which team is going to win. Because when you're just watching from the outside, you ascribe different values to different things. And when you actually go to coaching, you actually start adding rounds, you learn very quickly that, what would be a good example, like confidence levels is a load of bollocks. It doesn't really matter. Like, the best way to be confident in CS is just to have good rounds of good defaults, play off each other well, have good comms, and like there is no momentum between rounds. It's like all of this sort of stuff goes out the window, and you learn very quickly that it comes down to making good decisions, comming well, all the team play. So for me personally, just coaching at that sort of level, and I've coached high level since then, it's very, very useful to kind of ground yourself, and then it helps you fill out gaps in your game knowledge. So, for example, at the moment, I've started trying to get into contact with some teams and trying to get kind of back to doing maybe not full on coaching, but at least talking to players, figuring out how to add rounds, figuring out how to help them change stuff, just because I can ground myself again and then start fixing any issues I've got in terms of game knowledge. So if anybody else is thinking of doing this sort of thing, if you're like a color commentator, just coaching like, I don't know what sort of level, like an ESEA intermediate or main team will instantly help your game knowledge so quickly. And you'll very quickly, as I was talking about, learning what matters, and you'll be able to craft yourself so much easier. So yeah, for me and for people in general, it helps a lot just coaching a little bit and then be able to focus your game knowledge in the right sort of places.
I think it is a good topic though, for sure. Because especially in CS, there seems to be a lot more, and maybe some of them now even going full circle, bridging the gap completely. Like Moses, for example, being a pro, then going into, coming from a team environment, then going into your analysis, your color commentary a little bit later on, and back to coaching, into coaching, back into the team environment. I think certainly like in CS, there's a lot of people who have the experience to bring the game knowledge, right? And to me, it sounds like, you'd certainly say that they need that game knowledge to fill that sort of role, and to have a bit more of the hands-on experience to give a full picture. Because I know certainly, and I'd be guilty of this, and I think it was only very, very recently watching like Richard talk about it a little bit and how often things like momentum and confidence actually come up in your average broadcast, of an online tournament or whatever. A lot of casters talk about it and how a shift in momentum occurs, and I think it can for sure, just in the general gist of the game, and you can definitely talk about it after the fact. But sometimes like it gets mentioned a bit early, or the confidence play to go for a round like this. It's probably a little bit more about like hitting a rut, or they have something in the back pocket that they're saving for your wackier situations, when you need to pull out a big round. I guess the question that I want to like frame here a little bit is, do you think it's important for commentators, particularly on that more color side, and I guess on the desk, a host as well could be involved, an analyst, and all that kind of stuff, but for talent, I guess, to have the deeper game knowledge? Because I think to me it's like, and like that hands-on knowledge specifically, because if you look in younger titles, for example, like your League of Legends, where it's massive, very, very big, a lot of their color team, a lot of their analysis team are just kind of broadcasters. Not to put them down, but they don't have that same kind of knowledge of playing in the game. I think they're starting to get there a little bit more, adding a few players or coaches or whatever that are retiring. But certainly in some places, I don't think they come under fire for it so much, but maybe they are missing that like hands-on experience.
Yeah, I mean, this is a massive topic in general of this sort of stuff. How do you even craft analysis to fit for the average viewer and stuff? So it's definitely a tricky one in terms of like when you're building a whole broadcast team. How much do you need ex-pros? Do you need coaches? Do you need people that've got all the game knowledge, or can you go more on the banter side? So it's definitely a balance, and across a broadcast, you need the right sort of things. I think in general, in terms of on broadcast, I don't think you necessarily need loads of people with super good game knowledge. I think you need a lot of people with a good feel for how a sport functions, how a team functions. So for a good example is Monty hosts the Flashpoint desks. Monty's CS game knowledge isn't brilliant, and he'll be the first to admit that. But Monty is still a really excellent host in CS because he understands how teams function. He understands, even if he doesn't know all the minutiae of what we're talking about, he knows how to direct a conversation in the right way, just off what we're saying about how this team is performing, or and just like in general, the way that he used to think about League is very close, I'd say, to the way I talk about CS when I'm on a broadcast. So having people like him is very, very helpful. And in general, across a broadcast, I think it helps a lot when a lot of people have kind of the same, or at least similar views on just roughly how like a team game really works and what matters and what we should put emphasis on and all of this sort of stuff. So it's definitely a balance. I think a good way to look at this topic is, so I don't know if you've seen them, but like on like Prime Video, they do like this All or Nothing series. Or I don't know if you've seen any of these, but they just follow around teams from different sports, and then they.
Oh yeah, I've seen trailers of.
So they followed Tottenham Hotspur football team, or they did the All Blacks for a season and stuff. So they film these long things, and then when they cut them down, a lot of what they end up talking about is like confidence, momentum, and they have a lot of like the team talks before they go out and do the matches. So a lot of like a lot of the time on these shows is spent talking about these sort of topics we've been mentioning about confidence and like all of these sort of stuff, getting yourself in the right mentality, headspace, all this sort of stuff, because they can't put the more complicated stuff in because it would alienate the average viewer, or maybe the teams just simply do not want like them sharing their like strategies and stuff. So this is just a really great example of how when I watch these sort of things, I pick up very quickly that they're always hitting on the same tones. There's not really any in-depth analysis, and I think it does detract a lot from the value of this sort of content. So jumping back on towards like broadcast and stuff, yeah, I think having at least a subset of the broadcast team that can go into the deeper side of the game. And you don't even necessarily have to go that deep. You just have to like focus the viewer on the right sort of thing or the right aspect, or, you know, something on the Flashpoint broadcast we're working really hard on is like telestration segments, using clips, using different angles to try and show the average viewer that, you know, aiming at someone's head doesn't really matter. Every pro can shoot the other player in the head. You know, positioning right, using the good team play, right, making the right calls in the right situations. That's what wins these teams games. So I think, yeah, you do need some people with really great game knowledge, but the real skill is knowing how to translate that to the viewer. That's really hard. Like I don't necessarily think my game knowledge has got that much better since I've moved into doing some broadcasting. The thing I've had to really learn is how do you translate this to the average viewer? What language do you use? What tools do you use? You know, all of this sort of stuff. So I hope that answers your question. But yeah, I think we just need a good mixture, and it's definitely important to have at least some people on the broadcast that can translate the right things to the viewer.
Yeah, it's certainly again a conversation I've had with a couple others. Like I had Vu on. Obviously he pumps out the content. He's got like a second channel that gets into very, very nuanced stuff. And I think we had a bit of a conversation about trying to keep things simple enough, but not like patronizing, and also still entertaining. You know, it's a very, very difficult way in. Certainly though, I think, and the content conversation always comes up in these interviews just by the nature of the people that I tend to have on. I do think that, like in the CS space, you know, the community, the viewers, really do eat up that analysis content. But maybe in a sense, a lot of them think they know a bit more than they do, and might indeed find some of it, you know, trying to be nice. They might find some of it a little bit overcomplicated when you actually sit them down and, you know, give them a full, 10-minute super in-depth by Allan Telestration kind of thing, you know what I mean? I wanted to ask you though, like, how with the Flashpoint stuff, how did that kind of make you feel when you get the proverbial call to go and work an event like that?
It was pretty unexpected, to be honest. I know from speaking, so for those that don't know, until Duncan recently left Flashpoint, it was Duncan that was making the hiring decisions, at least definitely for Flashpoint Season 2. It was him that decided the talent team. So it was his call to bring me in. And I know from speaking to him, I know from what he said in some other places, that for a couple of years, he's been pushing for some people like me, like potentially someone like Maui as well, to try and get some more people onto desks at some other tournaments so we can work in new talent. So I'd known for a while that Duncan wanted to get me on some broadcasts. The call up to Flashpoint was a bit unexpected. And, you know, I think when he first asked me to do Flashpoint, I'm not totally sure what he had in mind. I think he might have wanted me to do flat out telestration when he first called me up. But by the time we got there, I was just a regular desk analyst and did some telestration when time allowed. So it was definitely very, very unexpected. And as I said, you know, I knew for a while that Duncan wanted to get me on some desks, but it was always the question of how do you even get on a desk in Counter-Strike? It's not like casting. There's no layered system. There is no analyst desk at lower tier tournaments, or a Sweet Snow, for example. These sort of online things. There is no like ladder. So you top tournaments on the desks. What happens is when they have a space, it tends to just be an ex-pro that fills it, and they don't really know that. You know, I don't blame the people that make the hiring decisions. You just wouldn't know who to get unless you're really in the know, and you're someone like Duncan that follows, you know, all the content creators, all the journalists. So, yeah, it was definitely very unexpected, but yeah, invaluable experience going on that broadcast.
I can imagine. I mean, it was a lot of fun to watch as well. Like, everybody seemed to fit in, because obviously Hawker was a bit of a newer face there as well. Everyone seemed to fit in quite quickly, and I'm curious to see where it goes. Certainly with Duncan leaving, I think you might have I don't want to say like a loss of direction, but certainly that connection to like the community and pushing talent and whatnot. What is to stop it from just fitting into the rest of the broadcasts that are already available, that kind of thing. So it is an interesting one for me. But I'm kind of curious. Your style and like watching you a few days in once you'd gotten comfortable and everything with the flow and how it all works. Do you watch like a lot of sports at all, or
Not that many. I watch enough to know roughly what a desk looks like in a normal sport or what a
right?
pundit does, but not loads. Not loads.
Fair, because I get that kind of energy from watching you, that like very very succinct and similar to the way that sports punditry and whatnot works, which for me I think is something that in a way resonates a little better with the audience, with those analyst desks and the people that watch them, because I think it's not controversial to say that a lot of the viewers just kind of dip out in between games and all that kind of stuff, unfortunately. But certainly I think sometimes we're lacking a little bit of just a bit more of a straight up kind of nature. You know what I mean? Is that maybe like what you're trying to push? Just being succinct and
It's a good question.
yeah.
I don't know. I think in the future, what I've kind of been working on since Flashpoint 2 and going into future tournaments is how to be a bit more well-rounded, how to bring more of the banter, how to... A very small example, something I've been working on, is trying to remove every technical term from... I'm literally trying to use 0 technical terms. So one example would be, I don't even like saying first contact anymore. I try not to say it because I can just tell for some viewers, it might not be a term they've heard before and they won't know exactly what it means. So just say this player's taking the fights first or something. It's just a very small example, but in general, trying to remove all technical terms, trying to gear the analysis in the right way for the viewer, because at Flashpoint Season 2, I had no idea what I was doing when I first went in that sort of sense. It was just like, let's just give this a bash. Let's just throw everything at it and see what happens. But in general, I mean, before the tournament, I had a lot of conversations with other members of Talent about how we wanted to do it or what they wanted out of the desk segment. And I won't go into the details, but we talked a lot about how we didn't think... I think it's fair to say that the average like desk in Counter-Strike doesn't really do enough. They're very simple. It's just sort of run the highlight packages, say a few words, cut to the next game. And we didn't want to do that. We wanted to have a lot of value in the desk segments, bring a lot of telestration stuff, bring a lot of clips. And just for me personally, I wanted to throw a lot of ideas. Like every single desk segment, I'm pretty sure I hit on a different idea, or that was the intention. And I had a lot of ideas I could dig into because I did a lot of prep on the games. So that was a really big part for me, was just trying to throw as many ideas at viewers as possible, get them to look at these teams differently, all of these sort of aspects. And then, of course, by the end of the tournament, we really had ramped it up in terms of using clips and using telestrators. And for example, someone like Monty is someone that loves this sort of stuff. He wants more. He wants us to push the boundaries a lot more with how do we use clips, how do we explain things in the game. He's also someone that wants more stats on the broadcast. We want, lower third graphics to come up whilst we're talking about a topic. So if we're talking about an AWPer, let's bring up the stats of that AWPer in the bottom corner, and then we'll just talk over it, or we'll reference it if it's a good point, or this sort of stuff, or whatever. Use the green screen, and there's no limit to what we can do. And just as Flashpoint as a concept, like the whole idea is that the talent basically runs the show in terms of we make all the decisions for what we want on there, and so much creative freedom. And yeah, that's kind of the main experiment of the whole broadcast itself, is seeing what can we actually do when we give talent all the space, all the tools, and let's just give it a go and present something very different to what you're going to see in another tournament. So I mean, we'll see how it goes in the future, but that kind of was the aim going in. And yeah, for me personally, I'm not even sure what my style is, but in the future, try and be a bit more well-rounded, but retaining kind of a high level of analysis compared with what you might see from some other people on the desk.
Yeah, I think getting things right in between games seems to be the big message for 2020, really. And now, I guess, feeding into 2021. Ultimately, the online era, ultimately the COVID era and whatnot, is getting shoulder content, making things a bit fresher, because obviously it's been very stale, to say the least, particularly in that middle kind of portion towards the end of last year. It was getting a little familiar, and certainly keeping the broadcast entertaining is quite a key thing. And that for me is always what's interested me on that Flashpoint side of things, because I think ultimately getting into this industry and whatnot, I never wanted to be super deep into the game and super analytical with things and whatnot. It certainly was more about being a good commentator, being a good broadcaster. Maybe, I've spoke about in the past, possibly doing a bit of hosting if it comes up. Similar position as yourself. There's not as much hosting stuff available with the online CS and whatnot. But yeah, I think Flashpoint, like, idea wise and direction wise, so far has been in the right place. But like I say, with Thorin leaving, we'll see what happens. It's a difficult one. I don't know. But yeah, I think finding your style as well, like when you talk about that and wanting to be a bit more well-rounded, it's always a worry, isn't it? You don't. I've found I've had issues with, like, maybe being compared or taking too much inspiration from other people and whatnot. So I guess finding your own style as a broadcaster is always a troublesome thing. But I don't know, just from watching like your YouTube and seeing you on the desk and whatnot, I think that you have a very good mind for the game and a really great way of getting that information across. I guess segueing into the YouTube content, we talk about that a little bit. What is it that you tend to focus on there? What's like a major thing for you that stands out when you're watching a demo, when you're reviewing around, maybe some of the nuanced things within CS that you find particularly interesting?
That's a very, very complicated question, because I've never really thought about how I'd look at it around. I guess the best way to explain it is when I watch around back, I look for something that isn't immediately obvious, or something that on the surface level you wouldn't always see. I mean, quite a lot of the time for YouTube stuff, I mean, you're just going to work from the highlights backwards, basically, is how most people do content. It's roughly just how it works. So in general, that tends to be how you pick rounds in the first place. But in terms of what you like highlight, what you illuminate for the viewer, what you dive into, that tends to be, okay, how do they get in this position? What's the decision making? Try and look at these aspects of the game. And in general, on YouTube, that's what I try to do. I mean, since Flashpoint Season 2, basically all my YouTube is like practice. I use it as just practice, essentially. I use it as all these topics we've talked about already. We're trying to craft yourself better to the casual audience, to the average Joe watching, trying to remove technical terms. So for me, doing YouTube content at the moment and in the recent months, that's what it's all been about, is just trying to present rounds in the right way. What do I highlight? Do I go really in depth on this stuff? Is that too much? Should I pull it back? Should I explain all the nades? Should I just talk a bit briefly, but talk about the overall kind of direction of the round? All of these sort of things. So there's a lot of things I look at for like how you pull apart a round. I mean, in general, for much more recent content, it's been a lot about how do I use Skybox to its fullest, because being real, when I've seen other people use Skybox in like Telestration segments and on broadcast, I don't think they're using it that well. I think that's I have a very particular way now I've worked out of using Skybox, just by using it so many times day on day and trying to think about how do you actually show around in it? How do you make it look good to the average viewer? So, for example, when I use Skybox, I like to turn almost everything off. So Skybox is like endless features for you can make the floor red, you can make all the buildings blue, you can go crazy with like showing stuff. And I like to turn all of it off because I want it to look as much like the game as possible. Because I don't want a casual viewer to see it and be like, what the heck is going on here? Like, why is everything blue? Why is everything all colorful? So I like to turn everything off and then just do it. Just use the pen to show things, just show this player's going here, this is how they're all moving. And, so in general, in recent content, that's been a big part of how do I use Skybox, and thinking very specifically about, okay, if I was going to go onto a Telestration segment, how would I actually show it? Because when you do Telestration segments, you've got 1 minute. You've got 1 minute up there, and you can't piss about. We're trying to show everything in a round. You've got to pick the stuff you're going to show, and that's it. You haven't got any time to show anything, and you're going on the fly. The clip's playing. You can't pause it. Maybe you can on some other programs, but if you're using Skybox, you cannot pause it. You're going. So there's been a lot of stuff like that where I've just been essentially practicing to go back on a Telestrator. And that's in general, my whole YouTube at the moment is just practice and a bit of exposure. Yeah. It's nothing else. It's like, I don't make any money from it. It's just, yeah. I mean, in general, the way I just think about YouTube these days is just another form of social media. It's just like Twitter. It's just like whatever. You just try and expose your ideas to other people and not overthink it too much. Just give some stuff a go, see what works, see what doesn't work. And it's like it's my platform to experiment essentially. So in general with YouTube, yeah, it's just been playing around and seeing what works or what doesn't, and trying to fit the average viewer a bit better.
Do you think there's like a space on the online broadcasts for a bit of a Telestration? What with DreamHack, I wouldn't be surprised if that keeps up for a little bit longer, with the online stuff, or maybe even ESEA, for example. Most of that's online. I think they're going to keep most of it online, moving forwards to group stages and whatnot. And you, again, have got a little bit of experience with making things kind of short and quick. Your like play of the day type thing on Twitter and whatnot. Do you think you'd be able to like make content that fits in to just show a quick round in a game that might even have just happened to put it in between like some online broadcasts?
So I'll tell you straight up, at the moment I time myself for how quick I can go from a map to having, I mean, if you just watch my play of the day stuff, that is literally a Telestrator segment.
Yeah.
It's not unintentional that they're a minute long and it's me talking over them and it's a clip just playing and I'm just talking. Like, it is literally a practice Telestrator segment. So yeah, I could do it easily. And I've just watched so many games of CS. I've coached a fair amount now that I can very easily just go from around and just rattle off, talk about it. I mean, it might not be you haven't got that much. If you're doing like a Telestrator segment, you haven't got that much time to prep. So you're going a bit on the fly. You're just talking a bit about what comes into your mind, and you're kind of working on muscle memory in a sense of just what you're talking about. So it's never going to be the most unbelievable analysis you've ever seen in terms of highlighting certain things, but in terms of talking for a couple of minutes about one round, so in general with Telestrator segments, something that I was pushing really hard to do at Flashpoint 2 was building one round into a bigger topic. Because what happens all the time is I haven't seen this so much in CS, but I've seen it quite a lot in like other sports and other esports, is they show a Telestrator round and then they just throw back to the desk and they just carry on like normal. Nothing's happened. It's just like a 1 minute segment. And what I was trying to do instead was, here's a round. This is what it tells you about this team. This is what you might expect going into this match. So I show a round by OG and I show an execute on T side. And I finish off a Telestrator segment and then I talk for 10 seconds saying OG's biggest strength, which this is the biggest strength on the T side, is set rounds, set execute, set stuff that Alexi B presumably is setting up. And they just run it. It's just a set call. They run out these rounds and they play them out. So I'd be on a Telestrator segment, I'd say that, and then I'd throw to the desk, and then I'd throw with a question or a particular point saying, talk off the back of this, essentially. Talk off the back of their strength being executes. How will this influence this game? Will this help them beat, I don't know, who are they playing? MIBR in the quarterfinals. So in general with Telestrator segments, that's something I worked really hard to do because I didn't want it to just be a 1 minute segment that's throwaway. I wanted it to build into the bigger narrative. And yeah, that was something from the start in general I found pretty easy. I think I'm quite good at that. I'm quite good at when I was like on the desk at Flashpoint, I knew all the teams pretty well at that point. I knew what their strengths and weaknesses was. It was super easy just to go from one round and build it out. So yeah, that was a really big thing for me. And I'd like to see more people doing that so that we can get these like the whole package of the broadcast has to fit. And that's potentially why some people are scared to throw in more Telestration segments, more kind of clips they're showing, more specific things, because they don't want it to just be like a jumbled mess of stuff all thrown together. They want it to be very fluid. And you have to, in my opinion, you have to do it in this way where you build into a bigger point. Otherwise, it's just going to be very jarring, and you're just going to throw to some random round, and someone's going to see it and like, great, there's a molly here. Moving on, let's talk about LXEV. You know, it wouldn't be that fluid. So for me, that was a massive point I was trying to work on. And in the future, I would definitely do it in the same style. I try to always be a springboard for someone else on the desk to talk about. And potentially another topic with all of this is like, I think, so in future tournaments, I'd like there to be a lot more talking between the person doing the telestrator and the desk analysts in terms of when. So even what I would like is the analyst to suggest telestrator rounds, or the telestrator person to have a back and forth with the analyst, so they know exactly what round's going to get telestrated. They know what points you're going to hit on, and they can already thinking in their head, okay, I know I have this good point off the back of it that I can dive into. And like, if you make all these things work, it will flow so well, and it will like be so seamless, and you'll get so much more value out of a 40-second clip than just showing it and then moving on. So there's telestrator segments, and yeah, in general, I'm probably someone that would like to experiment a lot with what we could do with telestrator segments in the future.
A lot to unpack there, honestly. Like, you know, it definitely sounds you have a vision and a picture of what you want, right? And I think that that's really important for broadcasts. There's certainly, even at that top level, a little bit of disconnect sometimes between. It seems what like talent and production are able to put on between each other, even talent between themselves, and it can. I think jarring's a great word for it, to be honest. Sometimes, not even when they're including telestrator segments or whatever, it can just feel a little bit disconnected from the game or from what's coming up next and that kind of thing. And obviously, there's been a lot of experimentation with it. I think. Some of it is just a lack of experience with obviously not as many like veteran members of talent and that kind of thing. And I mean, in a lot of roles in esports, isn't there? There's people who have the knowledge needed, whether it's behind the scenes or in management or whatever, but not specific enough for the esports space, and it leads to a bit of weirdness, I guess, even just with like little things like hiring and like rates for your online events, as is going on at the moment, of course.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I think it's so hard to get right. I've talked about this a few other times as well. There's a lot of companies that just really do not want to take risks, keep things clean, keep things, easy or as they are, whatever it may be. And that experiment word kind of frightens them a little bit. I think we're seeing signs of, again, Flashpoint, not to keep harkening back to them, but they certainly were up for that. Tiny little bits, I guess, from Blast, and then it seems like people are sort of following suit in other areas, trying to, once the door has been opened, trying to kind of squeeze their way in, but not necessarily the first through the wall. Which to me always seems, I guess, like the easiest option. But you're not going to get as much done. You're not going to get as many brownie points for it if you're not the innovator and the original concept and all that kind of stuff. But I don't know. Obviously, I've not got as much experience with that top level as you will have now. Working on Flashpoint 2 and all that kind of stuff. But certainly, to me, just like chatting, it seems that experience plus your know-how and vision and whatnot and practice, I guess, of what you've been doing online, I hope will lead to some good stuff in the future, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, on this topic in general, like, we've kind of touched on this a few times already, but like the power of just having someone like Monty around a broadcast, who, even if he doesn't have the best CS knowledge, his concept of how he wants a broadcast to look, or the things he likes, or the things he's done in Overwatch, or the things he's done in League, like the power of having somebody like him be a very vocal person on the broadcast team and having the power to say, let's do this, let's actually do this, or, you know, having a very good relationship with the producers and very quickly be able to implement something, or saying, you know, we want this length of death segment. Let's fuck having 1 minute death segments. Let's have a 4 minute death segment. Let's have a proper Telestration segment. Like having someone like Monty is totally invaluable. And it's potentially something that other tournament organizers, I don't know exactly who they have doing the hiring decisions or who they have managing the broadcast and stuff, but the power of having someone like him is just absolutely invaluable. And just for someone like me, who I'd never done Telestration segments before, I've done very similar stuff to it. And to my knowledge, that was the reason I was picked up in the first place, was because I was always likely to translate quite well into doing a Telestration segment on a broadcast. Like, it didn't take me very long to get up to speed. I mean, I think I did 4 Telestration segments, and then after that, they're all fine. Like I could just rattle them off 1 minute segments, and just doing stuff like I'd come in early and we'd record. So the first few I literally had no idea, and they were way too long. There was one that was like 5 minutes long, and they had to use it as a cold open because they didn't know how else to use it. Yeah. So after that, I spoke with one of the producers. I spoke a bit with Monty, and we were like, okay, this is the length we should be aiming for. And then I went away and I thought a bit about it. And then I came back another day and I said to one of the producers, you know, I'll come in early, a couple of hours early. Let's just like record this Telestration segment until we get it to the right length. So that's what I was doing to get them around to the right length. And then after that one, confidence levels were way higher and I could just do it live, no problem. But yeah, on this whole topic, having someone like Monty, even if they're not from CSGO, like go out there and find people that have the experience, people that have done this sort of thing before in other games, and just bring them in and have them being not necessarily a full-on leader and telling people what to do, just being someone that's actually throwing ideas in the mix or pushing people in the right direction. Because yeah, as I say, like Monty was definitely someone that wanted as many Telestration segments as possible. He wanted all the tools to be used. He wanted us to experiment as much as possible. So yeah, we need more people like him. And, you know, for me, Monty probably, in my eyes, is the best broadcaster ever in esports, just from watching him in other games. So for me, getting to do a tournament with him was amazing. And I talked to him a little bit now, and it's just like, it's a bit crazy having seen him in other games and thinking he was one of the best I've ever seen in terms of broadcasting as a whole package. And yeah, getting to work under him and learning from him moving forward. So yeah, Monty's the shit. There you go.
That's going to be the title. That's going to be the title of this one for sure. No, I certainly, like, you know, can't disagree, right? There's so much experience there and so much skill. And I think obviously he's learnt a lot from moving from, you know, a massive broadcast in League to a massive broadcast in Overwatch. And I suppose a little bit more of like I guess a businessman, like, you know, that whole commissioner position as well at Flashpoint. So he's showing everything that he's capable of, you know. And I think held the desk down very well also, you know, and open about his knowledge or kind of lack thereof in places and leaning on you guys quite a bit. What do you feel like about the sort of shift in analysis talent? Because I think we're starting to get, you know, more people in, a few more names like Maui doing very, very well after that first Flashpoint and getting onto the Dream Hacks, which is always a tough nut to crack, especially consistently. I think there's a few ex-pros like coming in, Pimpomaniac obviously over on the Blast broadcast looking pretty good. What's your opinion on that sort of position? Does everyone need to be an ex-pro? Obviously, we've touched on this a tiny little bit, but I'm not sure. Like, you yourself, obviously, you've got experience in those roles, but I think garnering respect on the desk is always kind of difficult, like from not necessarily from your peers, but from the community. And it feels like those ex-pros, when they come in, they already have that respect in a way. They already have the fans or the following or whatever, and they don't really have to prove themselves to a certain group or whatever. But certainly newer voices, such as yourselves, such as maybe Hawker working on the analyst desk, may have to do that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a reality of life, really, this sort of thing where like a lot of the average viewers will just take anything a pro says as gospel. And I've interviewed quite a lot of pros. Some are much more articulate than others. Some are much better at knowing the overall game than others. Something, I don't know if you've interviewed that many players, but something you'll learn very quickly is when you interview in-game leaders or secondary callers or coaches, they're so much better at articulating the overall game, and you can have a much more fluid conversation rather than so a lot of players just focus on their own game and don't really think about the bigger picture. So the idea that any pro player will be able to transition into a desk and be able to talk about an overall thing, explain the overall game, is just wrong. And they'll focus a lot more on individual things. I mean, I think in general, we've made pretty good choices with who we've brought in to do desks in general from the pro scene. So I don't think it's been an issue, but yeah, there's no reason the average pro player should be an incredible desk analyst at actually doing the role. Now, there's plenty of other considerations as a tournament organizer. Do they even know who to get in the first place? Pros bring a big following, so they might think, we're going to get it. You're going to get a bump in viewers. All of these. There's a lot of aspects and stuff as to why an ex-pro might stand a better chance. But yeah, I'm not sure I'm the best person. I think if you ask Duncan this question, he'd give you like a straight fire answer. He'd definitely go in and say that we need to get more people onto broadcast that aren't just ex-pros, and that we need a more well-rounded desk. And like, for example, for myself, like my actual analytical skills doesn't really come from Counter-Strike. It comes from my degree and like that sort of stuff, and doing a master's in maths and stuff. Like that's just a 4-year degree on how to analyze anything and how to present an argument, how to frame something, how to approach a question. Like that's really where my analytical skills comes from. And to be honest, Counter-Strike compared to master's level maths is like a joke to understand. Like it's really not that difficult for me to like understand CS. So in general, I'd like to see more of a direction of like that sort of thing, picking up people that even if they don't right now have the right knowledge, they have all the pieces to do it. And I don't want to big up myself too much because they've got a long way to go, but I know that's probably a big reason I got called up to do a Flashpoint is because I'd done stuff with Duncan in the past. He probably knows I have a maths degree and stuff like this. And like, if you just, there's not enough of like trying to grow talent into roles in general. It's just like, we just don't have the infrastructure really. And we don't have the right people around the broadcast. But yeah, in general, there's a lot of people that could be a top desk analyst. There just isn't necessarily the right routes to teach people. And it just seems a bit random who gets to do stuff. Like something I tell people all the time is that esports is just like knowing the right people at every level of esports. That's all it is. Going for anyone that wants to go up through the team level and play in higher and higher level teams, almost always people just recruit people they know. People don't go out there and look at all the options. So like I tell people all the time, like if you want to actually get into a better team, if you want to like advance yourself, just like get speaking to the right people, present yourself well, show good aspects, and like make the right friends. And for me, knowing Duncan and doing content with Duncan, like that's what got me onto the Flashpoint broadcast. It wasn't anything else really. So yeah, it's a massive topic. How do you get people into doing the desk stuff? But in general, I'd like to see a more varied cast of people coming on, and I'd like to see a bigger push to train people up to the right level and put more infrastructure in place to teach people how to improve at stuff. Because it seems to me at the moment people are just sort of thrown in the deep end and then they sink or they swim, and that's it basically. And then if they sink, then we try someone else out, and the world goes on. But I'd like to see a bit more of some more harmony and some more people being leadership figures on a broadcast itself and trying to introduce new people and then train them up. Because I don't think we see enough of that in general.
Yeah, there's I think the hard skills and the soft skills is kind of what you're touching on there a little bit, like with the analysis knowledge, I think is your hard skills, as it were, and then the soft skills of I don't know, presentation on camera would be a very broad way of covering it, but all that kind of stuff, banter with other members on the desk, are things that you can learn, that you can be taught, that you can come into. Generally speaking, I think if you've got like a problem with stage fright or whatever, you're probably not going to take the job to begin with. and perhaps ask for something a bit more behind the scenes. But yeah, the conversation around getting new talent in is one that for me, kind of resonates. I think it's again, not wanting to take risks, the nature of the industry, particularly in CS, because it's so open network and whatnot. Knowing the right people is 80% of the game, probably, both in a talent perspective and a player perspective, like you're talking about. So I feel like bringing new people in, it's kind of hard at the minute. I'd like to think in future and we see it a little bit with ESL, I guess, with like Joe Miller being ex broadcast talent. I'd like to think we see a little bit more of that in decision-making positions. Thorin obviously getting involved this year as well in a, I suppose now what has become a small way, or a small time period, let's say, with that kind of decision-making. And certainly giving newer people opportunities. It's getting there, right? And casting talent are getting it. We saw like at the play-ins of Katowice, Jay and Dweg, who are now back on, I believe, doing Pro League as we speak, alongside Wolfie, who you and I both know. There's a lot of names there that are certainly getting opportunities to move on and move up, but also, and this is just sort of regurgitated from, I think the By the Numbers episode after Flashpoint, right? Which is, you talked about Thorin speaking about pushing yourself and Maui forwards. He mentioned it on there as well, right? Where as soon as Maui did like Flashpoint 1, suddenly he's getting responses and getting into dream hacks and all that kind of stuff. And they just hire people who have been seen by others, or that have a perceived value. Not to say that Maui Snake is not good at what he does, right? But there is certainly a bit of a copying sort of thing that goes on a little bit. You see who's on other broadcasts and you want to have those same people, and trying newer talent is either to save a bit of money or because no one else is available from your regular team or whatever it may be. So there's not really a clear-cut path or system or even guarantee. I'm sure there are many commentators out there at the moment who would be happy to consistently work on a B stream, for an event or for an ESL, just to be given that kind of chance to get in and show themselves off, and then maybe with the promise of perhaps moving up a little bit later on when a space becomes available or when you prove yourself to be better than the current talents there, encourage some competition. But those types of paths aren't really set out, aren't really designed. And I think that's certainly something that I can talk about, being of the online space and whatnot, a few international lands over the years. The guarantee and the safety and the knowing, if I stick with this in 5 years and I don't fuck up and I continue to improve over those 5 years, then maybe I get a spot at this particular company doing these particular events. But there's nothing really like that, and maybe that's just the way it stays. But it certainly does seem to me that there's a little bit more of that upward mobility in some of the other esports that are a bit more franchised or a bit more developer hands-on, where it is like, okay, I've been called up to do tier 3 EU league or whatever, and that therefore means that I'm being watched. Someone from Ubisoft or whatever has told me that they think I'm pretty good, I've got potential, maybe improve on these 5 things, and you'll get asked to do the tier 2 EU league in 6 to 12 months time or whatever it may be.
Yeah, I mean, this is a massive topic. I think a lot of these sort of things just happen because I see this all the time in esports at all levels in every respect. It's just because there isn't enough people with experience.
Yeah.
So what you'd want is someone that had been a talent member in the past and maybe doesn't want to fly around anymore or something. You want them to be like the talent manager and make these decisions of who to bring in. And they'll definitely be pushing, trying to breed new talent and trying to teach people. But the problem is, they're just going to get a coaching offer. They're just going to get more offers to do other tournaments. So you never get the people falling out to go into these sort of roles. And exactly the same thing happens with teams. That's the reason there are no general managers, is because you're just going to go and coach a different team and be in the spotlight more. and there's just not enough people to do it. That's just why there's no GMs. So this whole topic of bringing up the right talent is exactly the same for teams. I mean, there just are no good GMs really. There's like 3 or 4, count them on your hand. The rest are just like a joke. They just like bring in players that have just got good stats, and like they don't go around properly scouting talent. So the whole esports, everything, this sort of problem is so permeated everywhere. In terms of how do you bring in the right talent, how do you scout the right talent, and to my knowledge, Duncan is one of the only people in CS that does anything like this, tries to look for new people, tries to push them onto tournament organizers. To my knowledge, there isn't really anyone else. I don't know, there might be other people that say there are, but without Duncan, you just wouldn't see someone like Maui getting onto top level broadcasts. I'm pretty sure he might have done it in the end just by constantly. He probably end up in a casting role, to be honest, without Duncan, I'm guessing, if you stuck it out for long enough. But without someone like Foreign pushing this onto tournament organizers, you're just not going to see this sort of progression. So, yeah, I mean, hopefully in the future, when we've got more people that have been in the industry for longer, we can get them falling into back-end roles in the TOs, and then they can work on, let's have, a good talent lineup. Let's bring these people in. Let's, we'll bring this person in for a bit less, but they can learn, they can have all the experience, they can cast with the top people. I don't know. They can do more of the group stage games, however you want to do it. There needs to be more of a system to bring in the right people. And I don't see why not in like an ESL Pro League, why you wouldn't just have 10 different casting pairs that get given one game each. Like during the group, there's still like a bazillion games during the group stages. Yeah. You don't like the value for them just doing one game and getting the exposure and getting the experience and getting to talk to the producers, getting to talk to the other talent. Like, there's no way you're sacrificing that much on a broadcast, and I don't see why you wouldn't do it from my perspective. Like, you've got nothing to lose, in my opinion, really. You'd save money and you'd get these people a lot of exposure. So, yeah, this is like a massive topic, and I don't know why more TOs don't do it. It's not like the team side where you're not just going to run random players. You're not just going to run someone just to give them a chance because you're not going to sacrifice your results. It's very different on a broadcast. You can afford to bring somebody in. And of course, you're still going to bring in people that are experienced, still going to have a good cast. You just might not be at the same level as your top talent. But in general, I don't know why more TOs don't do this sort of thing. And hopefully in the future, we can move in a direction where there is a more, maybe not more of a solidified path, but more opportunities, more chances for someone that's up and coming to interact with the top talent and ask them questions, or get someone actually watching their games back and giving them some feedback. Like, to my knowledge, basically everyone does it on their own. They watch their own games back and try to learn from it. And yeah, there just isn't enough of a system to progress and learn from. So there's lots we've got to learn. There's lots we've got to improve on. But I think very slowly we're moving in the right direction, but we're not there yet. And there needs to be more of a pathway for upcoming talent in the future.
Yeah, well, I mean, in the future, like you say, that's what we can hope. That, I suppose those of us that are young and that are getting into it, once we've built a career, you can turn that into something a bit more beyond. I think the travel is usually the one, isn't it, that tends to stop a lot of talent, tends to make them question, or a particularly bad event rolls around or something like that kind of makes you question your drive.
Existence.
Yeah, maybe the full on, the full 9 yards. I know, like Anders towards the end of Flashpoint with all that drama going on. I think Thorin mentioned that he was thinking about what to do now. So it does happen. It does happen for sure. And I don't know. I think we can only hope that people will stick around, people will stay on, and I'm not so sure if I wouldn't go into a coaching or a GM role. I feel like maybe you would, right? Like after if the opportunity arises. But I have a question here. Like, so I had Vu on a little bit ago, and he talked about approaching things from like a very numbers-based perspective. He's coached a few teams, right, at the MDL level and whatnot. And one of the teams that he coached had a poker player. Doug Holt, I think.
Doug Polk.
Polk. Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, there you go. You're on the ball. At least one of us couldn't remember properly. But yeah, so he set up a team, right, and they approach things from like a poker perspective, like a exploitative and game theory, and all that kind of stuff, right? Switching between those two sort of ideas, and trying to, in a lot of ways, especially at an MDL level, you know, an NAMDL level, play things like in a numbers-based perspective, where it's like the top 5 teams on Inferno in the world play 3B at the start of the round 55% of the time, so we're going to do that. And then employing a little bit of, as again, my knowledge is not massive, but of that exploitative kind of style from poker, where you do what you would expect your opponent to do, or you calculate what you expect your opponent to do, and counteract that expectation. I don't know. I'm just wondering, do you think that works? Is that something that maybe some of the top teams are doing? He wasn't really able to comment massively, you know, with information, but he suspects that there are a few teams like Astralis and like Big may well be doing things that way.
It's a big topic. I think in general, using stats to analyze the game or run a team or make decisions, I don't think works really. And for a very good example is, let's say you pull the stats, okay? The top teams on Inferno's CT side, they start 3B, 64% of rounds. I don't know what it really would be, but let's say 64%. Well, that's brilliant. Should we run it 64% of rounds? Well, you know, you're just going to lose all your games if you play like that. You need to, the whole question is, why are they playing 3B in this situation? What's happened in the previous rounds? What do they want to achieve with these numbers here? And the moment you dump into that sort of stuff, all of this stuff with numbers goes out the window. And once you start understanding the game on a higher level, you don't need to look at the numbers very much. I'm sure some teams do look at this sort of thing, seeing like how, like the ratio between which side's team will end on, and then you go into the game, and then if there's a 50-50, you'll lean the way with the more numbers. But beyond that, no, not really. I think that just in general, like, I don't like stats that much in CS. I think stuff like HLTV rating is like terrible. I think it just like does terrible things to like how people view players and how they like. If anybody says to me player X is better than player Y because they got a 0.5 better rating, I'm just not going to listen to them ever. The only time you could use stats like that is when it's a massive disparity and it's just obvious. Like, a good analogy I like to use with stats is like, stats are like sports supplements, okay? Because people take like creatine and stuff thinking that's going to actually help them like build muscle and get fitter. No. You're putting the cart before the horse. You need to do the workout first, and then this is the extra 2%. And that's what I think of stats. Like, you need the real analysis first, and then you use the stats to reinforce a point. Use the stats to look at a slightly different angle. Use the stats to fly into a new point, and then you explore it further. So, yeah, it's something I've thought about a lot in the past. I mean, I'm probably better qualified than most to talk about numbers, I think. And just so people know, like, university maths and stuff, like, you don't really look at any numbers, and you learn that, how do I even describe this? Like, numbers don't really matter. It's like it's like trends was what matters. How things interact is what matters. So, like, to a mathematician, like 1 and 5 are the same. It's only 1 and 5x that's different. And it kind of applies, in my opinion, the same in CS, when just two numbers on the surface basically just mean the same thing, and you can't really explore anything very much out of it. So in general, I'm someone that's quite anti-stats, and I'm yet to see the right sort of stats to really, if we want to jump back to broadcasting, I'm yet to see a lot of really good stats. I think some stats I do like is stuff like 5-on-4 conversion, 4-on-5 conversion, this sort of stuff. Like that is a valuable stat to show, you know, how good it's basically a test of how good a team's fundamentals are, roughly, those sort of things. So that sort of stuff has a place, but we're a long way off having really good statistics and having ones that alone can actually describe a lot of the game. And I know from talking to other people, I've got like friends that have like computer science degrees, and they've tried to build statistical systems to look at the game, and it's just flopped, or like it hasn't actually worked very well, or they can't get it to actually have much of a profound thing to say. So Yeah, in general, that's the way I look at it. It's like it's quite easy to trick yourself with stats as well. That's the other thing. Like people say is like twist the numbers and they'll tell you anything. That's definitely the truth. Like you could like if you want to argue player X is better than player Y, you could always twist all the stats to explain why player X is better than player Y, and not actually say anything profound in the process. So yeah, I'm not someone that's quite anti-stats, to be honest. And until I see really good stats, until I see how it could add value to broadcast, until I see how it could add value to a team, I'm not a massive believer. And outside of edge cases, I think people will just stick to watching the game, understanding the game, and then trying to imprint good decision making on how they run a team or how they describe how a team plays on a broadcast.
It maybe like trickles down in CS a bit as well, because a lot of the players just raw statistics, as it were. I think there are certainly well-known names out there, that just kind of look at a player, see them pulling poor numbers, and decide that it's their time to get axed, and that's the problem, and that's maybe not necessarily the case.
Yeah, exactly. Like when you see, that's a great example. When you see a player with a 0.05 rating, the question shouldn't be that. It shouldn't be immediately jump to the conclusion of this player isn't working. It should be, okay, we've identified a problem. Let's actually look at the games to see what isn't working for this player. And, that's the bit that has value, not the stat itself. Just indicate something, or it's used to reinforce a point once you've gone looked behind the scenes and seen there's a potential problem. So for me in general, I would have used next to zero stats on the Flashpoint broadcast. In my on YouTube content, I use no stats in any of it. It's kind of like a hill I'm prepared to die on, to be honest, is losing specific stats. Yes, I will use them, but rating, kill death ratio, ADR, headshot percentage, all completely useless to actually explain the game. And apart from very big trends on certain players, they're not very useful. So yeah, it's quite a big topic, and I think people would definitely disagree with me that stats have a lot of value. But I'm yet to see. I'd love to be proved wrong, but I'm yet to see stats be used in a very meaningful way on a broadcast or within a team.
Yeah, I can definitely agree. I think mine comes from a bit of a different perspective of I don't have as much interest. I don't think they tell as much of a story, right? I think yours, certainly due to degree and all that kind of stuff, maybe comes from a more technical area, you know what I mean, as well. But certainly when viewing, I don't know, sometimes they're maybe not quite as relevant. Sometimes I will use it on casts, very, very briefly to just point out numbers, kills, general, again, that raw statistic sort of thing. But there's a lot I've been noticing, especially when you are a commentator that works a lot of these online events with some teams that you don't really know. There's a lot of pulling up map percentage statistics and things like that, and how strong they are. And I think ultimately you have to be very, very careful. They can end up being irrelevant because I've seen teams that have 20% win rates over 10 maps or whatever, and they will just trounce their opponent, you know what I mean, who's maybe, I don't know, 50% over 10 maps. Not their best map, but one that they've let float because they feel like the numbers work in their favor. And really, it's just, especially in a game like CS, I think there's so much potential for anyone to win a game, really, that you can't lean on them too much. So that's kind of my perspective. I think some of it as well, for me, does come from a little bit of a lack of understanding, where you might have a super strong knowledge of maths. It's always been a weak point of mine. Not terribly, but, it's not something that I went super deep in with, and then for some reason I decided to take politics and economics in my first year of university, and very quickly came to the conclusion that I don't know what I'm doing. And economics to you is probably not the most complicated of maths. It was BA maths as well, so it's not really all that difficult. But I can concur that stats are, at the very least, I think, misused.
Yes.
Maybe not completely useless, but I think people look at them in a very, very basic way to try and explain like fundamental things, which is just not really what they're designed for in CS, I don't think.
Yeah, as I said, they should be used to reinforce a point for like yourself. It's a very easy transition on a cast if you've got a good color to say this player's got really high ADR. Why is he performing in this manner? This player's not doing so well. Why is that? Oh, okay, it's because his sight's been hit 15 rounds in a row. There's nothing you can do about it. That's why he's got 4 kills.
Yeah.
Like that's how you build it into the narrative correctly. It's just my problem is when I see it used as the standalone point, the value is pretty non-existent to me. And as I say, it should be used to supplement another point or reinforce something or give a different angle. It shouldn't be a stat alone means nothing. A stat without context is just meaningless. It's just a number. And I mean, another good example is what you talked about of like map statistics and stuff like that. You can very easily get misled with that sort of stuff. You have to look at who they've played. Do they pick into this map? Do they normally ban it and they've only let it through a few times? Like there's so much context. And I can just say, like on an analyst desk when you're prepping for vetoes, like I wouldn't ever use those sort of stats that much to predict a veto. I'd more so go off their past vetoes, what I know about the team, what I know about this matchup, and that sort of thing to try and guess a veto. And you'll get closer a lot than just using the statistics in terms of what actually comes out. So yeah, that's the main thing I'd push for is use stats to add value to a bigger point rather than being the standalone thing. Because when you use it just a standalone thing, the value kind of diminishes a lot of what you're going to get out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, we've broken the hour mark. I usually like to keep them to this sort of hour 15 kind of area. So I think that will indeed do us. I want to thank you very much for coming on. It's been an interesting chat, mate.
Thank you. It's been good.
Clearly a lot of time, a lot of effort going into Allan's work and his improvement. He is constantly grinding away, and I think it is really paying off. Some great ideas there to learn from if you're wanting to move into the analysis area. Can always be a bit tough, like he talked about. Your online broadcasts and whatnot. I'd say across most esports don't have a lot of room for analyst types, so you have to start off as a color, which then in CS is a bit harder. Due to the nature of the game, so it's kind of a tough road to get going down, but at the same time, if you build the kind of foundations for it, like your opinion pieces in journalism, like doing some coaching at an amateur level, like making content around analysis points, all these things can really help you out. And Allan giving a good look into the drive, I guess, behind that, and then also finding something that you feel needs improvement. What are you going to do to improve that? What more can you bring to the table? Is a lot of the industry, to be honest. There's the connections, and then there's the unique ability that you may have as compared to your other commentators or your other hosts, whatever kind of role you're trying to go for. Either way, as always, thank you very much for watching. I appreciate your support, and I will catch you in the next one.